Welcome back to POV Podcast. I'm Liz.
I'm Dana.
And I'm Nas, and today our special guest is Dr. Walker.
Hello everybody, what's going on? My name is Dr. Reggie Walker. I serve as the director for the Educational Opportunity Program, also known as EOP at Rider University. I am a proud EOF alum, EOP alum from Rider University. I've spent majority of my whole professional career in higher education has been with EOF, and so excited to be here today to share a little bit about myself and answer some of the questions y'all got for me. Proud Trenton, New Jersey native, so it's always good to be around my Trenton people. So yeah.
Well, on today's topic, we're mostly going to be talking about culture and different upbringings, as all of our upbringings are very different. I don't really know where to say my upbringing started. I guess I could say that I am from Trenton, but a lot of people won't consider me like being a part of Trenton because I grew up in Hamilton too. So I lived half of my life in Trenton, half of my life in Hamilton, and I graduated from Hamilton High West. So I'm not a Trenton tornado. Nope.
I always looked at Hamilton High West as like the Trenton-ish school, right?
Yeah.
Because for people from Trenton, like if you moved out of Trenton to Hamilton, typically you were moving into that area where there's Hamilton High West or Nottingham. And so many of my friends who are from Trenton but went to Nottingham, went to Hamilton High West, but we always considered them from Trenton because even when they moved to Hamilton, it was right there on the outskirts.
Yeah, I live right on the border. I live right by Dunn. So
That's super.
And I grew up on Chambersburg, so I know I'm from Trenton.
I'm from River Section, and then my mom moved out South Trenton, right around the corner from Dunn. But I do realize, like, when I went to high school, we were still living out River Section, but we moved out there when I was in college. But if I would have went to high school around that time, since we lived by Dunn, I probably lived by Dunn.
Yeah.
So I'm like Liz, but on steroids, pretty much. I've moved around a lot, so I don't really have a place to say where I'm from. So the way my moving kind of corresponded with my schooling almost. So I started in Plainfield, born in Plainfield. Right before I started elementary, I moved to Piscataway. Then I finished elementary in Piscataway, and I ended up moving to Franklin in Somerset County. And then after that, I'll be transparent with y'all. I went homeless for a little bit, and while I was homeless, I lived within the New Brunswick and Edison area. And then when I stopped being homeless, I ended up moving down here. And I've been here ever since. So yeah, I don't have a direct place to say where I'm from.
You just say Jersey.
Literally.
Jersey. That's what you said.
I mean, my moving has stayed central to like the central leaning north area. So
because central is a real thing.
Yes,
it is Central Jersey.
Yes, shout out to Governor Murphy for that.
Again, I moved around a lot when I was younger, but for the last 7 to 8 years, I've been in Trenton, so I claim myself as a Trentonian. And honestly, I love it here. It's not bad. It's been quiet where I've lived at in South Trenton, and I like it. It's not as bad as people make it seem. I think people just have like a bad like stigmatism about it, and I think that's just what people say is about inner city communities and stuff like that. But again, I genuinely I like Trenton. It's cool. It's quiet. Stay out the way. Nobody bothers you for real.
Yeah. Well, speaking about growing up in Trenton,
Yes.
how was your childhood in Trenton?
My childhood was amazing. I grew up in Trenton as a 90s kid. I was born in the 80s, so 80s baby, 90s kid. And for me, that particular period in Trenton was an amazing one. There were so many programs, so many things that happened throughout the city, things that aren't currently happening, which is why, for me, I don't take for granted the childhood I had in Trenton, because it was truly a dope experience. We had Weed and Seed program, which was this amazing after-school program. We had the Martin House, which was this amazing after-school experience for students in the Wilbur Section area. We had Heritage Days, which was this festival that they would do for a whole weekend in the downtown Trenton area, where they would shut downtown down, close it down, and it would just be vendors and music and food and all of these things. So we had those types of festivals. We had Sports Night, which was a 3-day competition at Trenton High between what was the red and the black team, the school's colors, but the whole city would come out to it. And you would go into the Tornado Alley, the gym, and just watch them compete. And that was something that, being even in elementary school, being excited about sports night, and couldn't wait until I actually got to high school. That was literally the only reason why I went to Trenton High, was because I wanted to participate in sports night. So there was a lot of amazing things that the city was doing educationally. There was a lot of great things. I was a gifted and talented student, so I went to PJ Hill because there was 2 schools that they designated as gifted and talented schools. I went to junior 2, or Hedgepeth Williams Middle School, which was one of like the performance magnet schools, and we had like NDI, the National Dance Institute, that would come to junior 2 and junior 3, and we would put on like dance productions for a whole week. They would pull us out of school, and the whole city would come see us perform at the War Memorial or Villa Victoria. It's now called Teddy. TEDI, but it was NDI when I was there. So for me, my childhood in Trenton was great because there was so many things to be involved with. There was just so many things to do. Of course, there were certain parts that was, Trenton. But I think even for me though, like it taught me a lot in terms of survival, in terms of just having common sense and street smart, so to say. And so there was just so many things that I learned growing up in Trenton. And I don't think if I had a different upbringing or different area to grow up in, that I would have been given those opportunities or learned those things. So Trenton was great for me growing up. I can't ever say that it wasn't. So yeah.
Within that, did you face like stereotypes when you were growing up, or like?
Yeah, because Trenton's inner city. It's a large part of the city is impoverished, right? And so we know that in inner city communities and impoverished inner city communities, there's this automatic stereotype or stigma that can be attached to those places. And so, I remember once my mom was like bragging about me getting honor roll to one of her friends, and I remember her saying like her friend said that her daughter was like, oh well, he got honor roll at Trenton High. And it was just kind of like, what does that mean, right? Yeah. So it was one of those things where I think it's always been this stereotype or this stigma that if you live in Trenton, if you're from Trenton, like the bar is set lower for you or something like that. But like I said, I was always a gifted and talented student. I was always doing work that was advanced. I always had amazing opportunities come my way academically and things like that. And so I knew people doubted that, and I knew people probably would think like, oh, because you're from Trenton, you're not as smart as or not as gifted as some of these other students. And I didn't let it bother me, I guess, because I was always raised to know who I was and what I possessed and my skill sets and what God had given me. So I never really doubted myself based on what other people thought about Trenton. If anything, I kind of went into situations like, let me show you what Trenton can do, right? So even coming to college, I was fully aware that, being an EOP student, being from Trenton, that people already had their thoughts about who I was or what I could achieve. And I always just saw that as like a dope challenge. Like, all right, bet. Like, you think I can't do it? Let me show you just how much I really can do, right? So, like, for me, I never let that be something to stop me. If anything, it just fueled the passion that I had to be greater and put Trenton on the map and represent Trenton even better.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, I feel like I can agree on that. Definitely coming from Trenton schools and moving to Hamilton, I feel like I got a lot of stereotypes because they're like, oh, she came from Trenton. So I did have an IEP growing up, but they didn't really know that until I moved to Hamilton schools. But they were just saying that it was mostly Trenton's fault for me having an IEP because of their education system. And I don't know how I took that. I don't know. It's just so weird. Because, like, my aunts went to Trenton. So they're really smart. And so it's like, I know it's not education. But I don't know. I feel like a lot of people carry a lot of stereotypes because of that. Or, like, they'll look at me like, oh, you're from Trenton? Like, what does that have to do with anything?
Right.
Yeah. So I definitely agree with that.
So how have you guys faced some of that? Like, being here at Mercer, where you're in a space with people who are all from like this one community, right, or county, right? Have you faced that, like, even for some people, let's say that graduated from, let's say, a Lawrence High or Princeton and they're here and they're like, oh, you from Trenton? Like, did you guys experience any of that, or how do you face or deal with that?
I haven't experienced for anyone that goes to Mercer per se, but family that know I live in Trenton the last 7-8 years, they have always like made like little comments or smart remarks saying like, oh, you live in Trenton, oh, you're a thug, or you know, HUD and stuff like that. And anyone that knows me knows like I'm quiet, chill dude. And a lot of times I tell my family like Trenton isn't as bad as you think it is. And I go to school out here, and I went to Trenton Catholic Academy, and it was fine there. Again, like that was in Hamilton, but still a Trenton area. But like I said, it was mostly for my family. And a lot of times they just always said like bad things about Trenton, saying as if like I'm dangerous or it's not safe to come visit us. Like a lot of times we have to go visit them, which is like a 30-40 minute drive, which is no problem. But when you're trying to play where I live at, it's like it's not really that big of a deal. It's not that deep. Like Trenton isn't that bad. So when you stay out the way, don't bother nobody. No one's not going to bother you.
Right.
For me, actually, I agree with what you were saying. When I moved down here, immediately the smart remarks started. I think I've been dealing with that for so long. I think it's kind of like, because when I was younger and I was going to Piscataway, this was around the time when Piscataway was mainly like white people and Indians. So since elementary, I had been facing a lot of the stereotypes that came with me being sometimes the only black face in my entire class. So, and I think if it wasn't for my mom always being in my ear and just being like, I don't want you to be like me, I want you to be better than me, I want you to rise above the stereotypes, and I want you to prove to them that like at the end of the day you can do it. Like your identity is more than what people see in media or through stereotypes. So yeah, definitely that.
And sometimes again, in hearing some of your recollections of some of the stereotypes you face, sometimes it is going to come from people who are close to us, family members, things like that. I remember I had an aunt when it came time to get ready for high school. It was like, you should go to Ewing High. Like, you can just come stay with me and use my address. And I was like, no, I chose to go to Trenton High, right? I did a camp that was called Summer Stuff. It was this camp that they would bus us from all different parts of Trenton to Princeton Day School, and we spent the summer there. And part of the goal with that particular camp was to get some Trenton students to come to Princeton Day School. And I remember they had sent like some of the older Trenton students who went there, like teenagers, and we were in like middle school, and these were like high schoolers, and to share their experiences about PDS. And for me, I just was like, no, I'm going to go to Trenton High. Like I said, I wanted to do sports night. So even though my reasons for going to Trenton High was very, I guess, shallow, right? I was like, I want to go do sports night. I want to participate in sports night. But I knew that I was extremely gifted. I was extremely talented. And so I was like, I'll do well at Trenton High. And they were like, but yeah, you should take all those gifts and that talent and put it into like places like PDS. And I was like, no. And I was like, I remember asking about if they had a swim team, and I don't think they had a swim team at the time. And I was like, no, because I like to swim. So I was like, no, that's not going to happen. And then my aunt was like, well, just come to Ewing High. And I was like, no, I literally live walking distance to Trenton High. So like, I'm not going to disrupt my living situation to go to what you perceive would be a better educational experience.
My mom kind of did the same thing to me, because in elementary, I was a really gifted reader. Like English was, I picked it up like that. I was such an avid reader. And they were like, okay, well, why don't we move you up like a couple grades? And my mom was like, no. And thank God she did say no, because it turned out as they let me progress onward, my math skills weren't that great. And I used to get so mad at her whenever she would do that, but eventually I realized she didn't want me to go up a level just for them to knock me back down. And then she didn't want me to go through like that strike on my ego, because again, if we apply it back to the stereotypes and the massive amount of pressure I was facing from being, again, one of the only black students in my entire school, who knows what that could have did to me.
Right. Yeah. And I think sometimes we equate certain communities and certain schools with just automatically being better. And even if it's something where it's like, okay, they might be more academically rigorous, right? It's like, what type of environment are you ultimately putting your children in? And so for me, I was very much wanting to be in an environment with people who I felt comfortable with. And, I knew, like I said, I knew my academic capabilities, and so I was always an honor roll student. That didn't change, and me going to Trenton High wasn't going to change that. Well, there's some things, especially when I first got to Trenton High my 9th grade year, the newspaper, and that was the sad thing, right? Like when I say like people closest to you sometimes saying the worst things or having the worst thoughts about you. I grew up at a time where the Trentonian would publish like front page wild stories about Trenton High. They called it a zoo. And so it was just always one of those things where it's like our own newspaper is referring to the high school as a zoo. And it was like, when I got there, were there some wild things that I witnessed and seen? Yes, but I wasn't a wild person. So it wasn't like I'm getting involved in it. I know what I'm here for. And so navigating that space, those 4 years that I had at Trenton High, and then coming to college, now I'm on a college campus with these students that went to the Union Highs and the Princeton Day schools and things like that. And it's like, I'm tutoring y'all, right? And it just goes to show that you can't allow people to use your zip code or your city as a way to determine how far you can go or what you're capable of doing. And so, for me, some of these affluent kids that go to these affluent schools, mommy and daddy's money gets them through. It's not necessarily their skill set and I learned that in college. Like, I'm on a college campus with people who I'm like, I had to work 3 or 4 times as hard because I was in Trenton High, right? And there would be times I remember going to class and it's like, oh, we don't got enough textbooks. And I'm like, well, I know somebody in here don't really want to read. So let me get your book. You ain't really maybe like, all right, cool. And so for me, it was like it taught me to be resourceful. It taught me how to overcome challenges. And so then when I got to college, I would see people give up over the littlest things or be so frustrated with their academic experiences. And I'm like, nah, I'm resilient because I went through the Trenton school system, because I went through Trenton High. So not only did I, have the opportunity to meet amazing people, do amazing things, but it also taught me some resiliency. So even the things that people would use as like a deficit, for me, it was just like, no, it built something. It built my character, it built my resolve, it built something. And so it helped me when I got to college, because that was the very first time going to Rider where I experienced being the only black person or one of the few black people. And I had to adjust to that, like, oh, snap, I don't know what this is like. But again, it was having that resilience, being a Trenton High student, that taught me how to navigate Rider, because I knew at Trenton High, like, I don't give up. So here it was like, I'm not giving up. So, and that taught me a lot. Like I think even like when I talk to my Trenton students, particularly how college can be difficult for some of you in terms of the pressures you got, the academic pressures. You may have 1,000 things going on at home, all this stuff while all trying to get grades and good grades and go to class and all that. But I always remind my Trenton students, like, think of all the things that you've had to overcome to get to this point, right? Like violence or walking through neighborhoods and not being tempted to join gangs and things like that. So if you can make it there, you should be able to walk through this campus and overcome every temptation, overcome every hurdle, overcome every barrier, because you literally went through an upbringing, or you had an upbringing that built you a certain way. And so don't look at those things as deficits, but look at what they did for you. And I always say, like, being from Trenton, like, we built for it tough. Like, we don't give up easy. We know what it's like to have to scrap and struggle sometimes and do some things. And so that should help us when we're in this environment. When we got a professor who's being annoying and not cooperative and helping. When we got 5 classes on top of all this other stuff. Like, we should still be able to overcome that because of what we've had to overcome to get to that point.
Yeah, it's like you got the house to make the foundation.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Amen. There you go.
Yeah. So within that, like, was there ever a moment where, like, you had, like, a big culture shock? Like,
yeah, like, literally, my freshman year at Rider, because even coming in through the EOP Summer Academy, majority of the EOP students looked like me. And so, but that was dope, because that was the first time interacting with people who were from other places like Trenton. So it's like, you got Camden students, Newark students, Jersey City students, and it's like, oh, we all got the same experiences, like, different towns, different names, but the same experiences. And so it was dope to just meet so many different people from New Jersey that had these similar experiences, but we all looked like each other. But it wasn't until September when we kind of got out of that EOF bubble, and I remember walking into a communication course, because I was a communications major undergrad, and I remember walking into my mass media communications course, and I was like, wait, where the black people at? Because I was so used to, my EOP classes where everybody kind of looked like me, and I was like, oh, this is what this feels like. And so I remember you would walk into the class and there was a desk that sat way like a table, and I just went way into the back of the classroom and kind of sat in this corner and tucked myself in that corner, and I'm just observing the rest of the class, and it's just like all of these faces that don't look like mine, and clearly they had already bonded and got to know each other, I guess, over the orientation period or whatever, and they're coming and talking and just having good conversation, and I'm just kind of sitting in the back like, I don't know y'all don't know me. Yeah, this is different. And so that was a complete culture shock for me, and it took some adjusting to knowing what that felt like, because even growing up, you hear the term you're a minority, right? Term I hate hearing now, but growing up you always heard that, but I never knew what that felt like, because in Trenton it was black and brown people, right? And so white people were the minority in Trenton, right? And so I did not know what that actually felt like to be one of the very few in any type of situation until I got to Rider. And so that was a huge culture shock for me, because I just did not know what that felt like. And then it was also a culture shock in the sense of being confronted with racist attitudes and discriminatory situations, which again I hadn't had to experience, because everybody looked like me where I was coming from, and so that was the first time having to experience those types of things, or people as microaggression. People, oh, you don't act like you're from Trenton. What does that mean?
Yeah,
what did you think somebody from Trenton was going to act like? You thought I was going to rob you or something like? Oh, like what does that mean, right? And so that was a huge culture shock, because I just did not know what that ever felt like.
Yeah. What was your path of adjustment to the culture shock? Like, I know when we're presented with it, some people tend to go in like two paths. Some people feel that pressure to conform and they fold under it, but some people end up becoming just more protective of their community. So like, I'm curious, like
for me, it was EOP or EOF, right?
So you always had that community.
Because we had that community that we built. So when I started in September, I already had 49, because there's like 50 of us that came through, 49 amazing individuals that I knew that were my community, that allowed me to have that safe space, that office. So like I would leave that class and head straight to the EOP office like, yo, let me tell you what my class is like. And it would be and it would be other students there that could relate to that and be like, yo, same here, right? And so that community amongst my EOP family was like the first safe space. And then I got very involved on campus. I sought out the other spaces that were for Black students or students of color. And so we had like BSU, we had LASSO, we had ROCUS, we had all of these organizations that cater to the needs of Black and brown students. And I put myself in those spaces because that's where I felt comfortable. And that was my safe space to navigate that. So yeah, that's where I found my community. And because again, I'm from Trenton, I definitely wasn't allowing a racist environment or discriminatory environment or unwelcoming or non-inclusive environment to stop me, because it's like, nah, like the things that were supposed to stop me in life didn't. Like all the things I had to go through in Trenton, I'd be doing if I let, this be the thing that stopped me. I just got to figure out how to navigate it, because that's what growing up in Trenton taught me. It taught me how to survive. It taught me how to navigate things. It taught me how to be resourceful. So my community was the first place, and EOF was definitely that for me. And Rider was unique. The one thing, like even though it was a predominantly white institution, one of the things that was really dope, especially my freshman year, is that our cafeteria was set up where we had like this large cafe. You walked in, you swiped your card, and it was like this huge cafeteria. And then it was like off to the left, it was this small caf. And the small caf is where all the Black and brown students were. And so, like I forget what the name of the book is that,
why are all the Black kids sitting together in the cafeteria? Right.
And so it literally was that experience where we had our own little community in that small caf. People would be playing their music. You would have and we would just be back there, and it was just like, oh, this is love, right? So that was also a safe space. And the other dope thing, because Rider is in Lawrence, which is a township of Trenton, outside of Trenton, all of the workers there, like CAF workers, all that, they were all from Trenton, and some of them were people that I knew. So that was such a relief. And I don't think people understand that. Like when you are at a predominantly white institution and these cafeteria employees that are from these inner cities, those are the people that these students are connecting with. right? Because it's like, I'm not about to open up to this professor. I don't know y'all. And then I could go in the CAF, and God bless her soul, was a wonderful woman by the name of Miss Ann who took care of us. She was like she didn't play. She did not play, but she took care of us. She made sure if we were hungry and our meal pass had expired, something, she would make sure that we were fed and that we were good. We could talk to her about our frustrations. She understood us, and like I said, there were people that I actually grew up with and knew that worked in the dining halls and stuff. And so like I would just go kick it in there with them. Like we'd be walking through the CAF talking. And so Trenton helped me get through Ryder because those Trenton people that worked there were my safe space. They were my outlet. And so that helped me adjust really well. And then being a student leader was probably the biggest adjustment outside of the community piece, because once you get involved and have a say in how you want your campus community to look and what you wanted to do, that just made everything went up from there once I started getting involved. So.
Yeah, that happens a lot in schools. The students always tend to go towards the employees, and no one really thinks about. Like I remember in all the schools I went to, I always remember the black kids. We would always gravitate towards the security guards because the security guards, they looked like us and they acted like us. So it was always they were always like an outlet for us. And then again, when I got here, I was so nervous because my perception of authority was so different based off my upbringing. And then I remember I got here, I went to the ES office, and I looked in Farmer's office, and all I saw was a bunch of books on black culture, and he's playing R&B on the radio. And I was like, oh my God. I'm like, oh my God. Like, and that really, finding and building community within college is just, it's so important.
So important. And I think that's what EOF does so well.
It does.
Recognizing that our students need this. So it's always funny, being a professional for as long as I have, and also coming into college 2001, so yeah, I'm dating myself. It's always funny to see college campuses, pushing these DEI initiatives and inclusive stuff, and it's like, but that's always been EOF. That's always been our job. Yeah. That's always been what we had to do. So sometimes it can even be a little frustrating when we want you to sit in this meeting and hear about this great idea that we got, and it's like, y'all think it's so great, but we've been doing this, right? It's nothing new to us, right? Because we've always been the program that's had to provide that for our students. We've always had to make them feel included. We've always had to do what the university wasn't doing. And so, yeah, I'm super grateful for EOP and how they made me feel included and adjusted at Ryder.
Definitely relatable. Like, for me, going to predominantly white middle school, I felt like the time where I was growing up, I showed the type of person I was because I am Hispanic. So going there and like having people look at me weird when I spoke Spanish and stuff like that, it definitely made me like, I don't know how to like word it, but it definitely made me, I guess, whitewash, because like I just didn't want to show that Hispanic side of me because it felt wrong. And then once I hit high school, it's like, oh, there's more people that look like me, and I feel comfortable. I didn't really feel extremely comfortable until I got to EOF, and I definitely did see more people like me and people who had the same stories as me. And it's like, that is so true, how we build our own community within each other. And I don't know, like, we don't see each other with difference here. It's not one is better than the other and things like that here, versus like I feel like in other places you are.
Right. And I think authenticity is important, right? So to hear like in middle school speaking Spanish, and then I'm kind of discouraged to do it, right? And so American culture wants us to assimilate into the dominant culture.
And like my parents really went through it when it came to that, because they're like, but why don't you? And I'm just like, I don't want to. And my parents are non-English speakers. So I remember going through that, and like, I would barely talk to my parents when we were out. Like, I hate speaking Spanish to them. It's like almost like I was ashamed of where I came from. And it's like, I know I wasn't ashamed of where I came from. And I don't know, like, going to that middle school is just like crazy, because I would have to be the translator in the main office because they didn't have anybody. They would call you out of class and be like, I need you to translate this for me. Like, they didn't have that. And they didn't have any, like, we didn't celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month.
Mhm.
Like that wasn't something that came to
You
us.
didn't see our identity
Yeah,
represented at
no,
all.
there was like no representation at all. Even the teachers were very racist. Like, you know, they just allowed certain students to say certain comments about Hispanics and Black people because they can get away with anything. And I definitely did feel that more in middle school because they would always refer like me as like an immigrant child. Like, and it's just like, I'm not though. I was born here. Like,
Yeah.
and definitely coming here, I can feel like that I don't have to change who I am.
Right.
Like my culture is represented. Like,
Right.
I feel like EOF does a good job of that. Like anywhere that you look, in like any EOF office, you're represented.
Right.
Even right now, like this is like my first time getting like celebrated for Hispanic Heritage Month. Like, besides like high school where like I did a talent show, showing off like Hispanic culture. But yeah, like I never had my schools post me for Hispanic culture or anything like that.
Right.
Or like me getting hyped up by my friends that I do speak Spanish. Like
We were actually just talking about this with our previous, it was one of the students in the summer, and I forget what the conversation was about, but I remember telling them, I was like, have you ever really looked around you? I know the conversation was about the types of speakers that we have. And I was like, look around you. You see the people around you, right? Do you think it's a coincidence that everyone around you and all the people that we put in front of you is deliberately a person of color? Like, do you think it's coincidence? We do that on purpose because we want you to see yourself represented.
Right.
Yeah.
And we rarely get to see that outside of our own communities. And so I think when we have the opportunities to bring in people in for our students to see, they should be reflective of what our students look like. But yeah, I'm glad that you have found that comfortability and that inclusive environment here, because middle school can be rough, and to me middle school are the years where students start to make that switch in terms of what they're going to allow their identity to be, because that's where the bullying picks up, that's where people feel more ostracized, right? And so to be able to reverse that, I think is really dope, because when I got to college, I was running into a lot of Black people who you can tell had those experiences in middle school that told them, change who you are. And then they did that. And so by the time they got to college, they had only known for these last 8 years or 4 years, if you count middle school and high school, they had only known being what other people wanted them to be. And then now they're at odds with other, and so that was one of the things that was weird too, because in my mind I'm like, oh, it's a predominantly white campus, there's not a lot of Black people here, so all the Black people are just going to connect and get along, and then you would find out that there's different types.
All kinfolk and
right, all kinfolk and skinfolk, right? But some of that just had to be learning about people's experiences, where, you know, a lot of the Black students that I got to interact with at Rider who weren't necessarily a part of the in-Black crowd, right? They had very negative experiences prior to high school, even in middle school, that taught them to assimilate and deny parts of themselves and just, you know, embrace the dominant culture to the point where it was what they did to get them through middle school and high school. So now when they're coming to college and other Black kids are looking at them like, what's up? And they're like, what do you mean? Like, this is this is who I am. And it's like, are you sure? Or is this
like,
who you had to be to survive and make it through? But, you know, like now, especially as you get older, you got to learn, like, you can't judge their experiences, because just the same way, like in Trenton, I had to adapt and do what I needed to do to survive. That's what they had to do in that environment. And so my environment was this urban concrete jungle. Their environment was maybe this more affluent place, but it was hostile. It was microaggressions. It was all these things that I never had to deal with. So to me, it's like the kid that had to walk down the street and not be accosted by gangs is no different in a sense than the kid that has to walk through a hostile racial environment and has to be accosted by racist kids or bigoted kids that are making fun of them and the microaggressions. And so he had to adapt, or some of those students had to adapt to survive that. And, you know, college is where they were then confronted with other Black students who were like, nah, we're not doing that. But yeah, there have definitely been times on college campuses where you're very aware that you're Black in this white space, and you have to ask yourself, what is it that I want to show people? Do I want to show people this is an authentic part of who I am? So like for me, like I walked around campus with a shirt, like I had Trenton shirts, and I walk around in a shirt that had like, because you can get them from the mall, it was like a sneaker store at the mall, and it had Trenton real big on the shirt. And I'm from Trenton, y'all gonna see that. I'm not ashamed of that. I like 2 or 3 times on campus had let my hair lock up. So like, yep, I'm gonna be the kid that looks this certain way, right? I got my Trenton shirt on, right? And so I knew that for some people that could be very off-putting, like, ooh, is he a thug? Is he this? And I didn't care, right? Those things didn't bother me. But then there would be sometimes, let's say, for example, if my friends and I are walking through or walking out of the academic building and we're being loud, and it's like, oh, shh. I want them to think we the loud ghetto black kids, because they just think that all black kids don't know how to, like we don't possess an inside voice, right? Yeah. And so sometimes I'd be like, shh, wait, we'll start laughing real loud again once we get outside, right? Because it's also being aware of this stereotype that is labeled against us as being loud and not knowing that there's an inside voice that could be used, right? And so, but then you have some people that's like, no, why should we have to quiet down? And it's like, because that's not being our authentic self. And learning the difference between authenticity and code switching and professionalism and time and place. Because sometimes it's just a time and place thing, and having to learn that to be black doesn't mean to always be loud in spaces where that's just not acceptable. The library is not a place where we should be falling all off the chair, laughing all on the floor. Like in our residence halls, yeah. In the cafeteria, yeah. In the library, no. And that's not being less black. That's just being respectful to that space and knowing that there's a time and a place for certain things, right? But sometimes when you're in a white environment, you may feel a need to be extra black. Like I'm gonna turn it up even more to let y'all know that I'm not conforming. And it's like sometimes that's not necessary.
That is actually a perfect segue into my next question. Knowing all of us now, and I think I can confidently say I think that we're all very aware of like our place within our culture and how we act. So my question would be, regardless of environment, what parts of your culture do you like that's non-negotiable? Like I have to show this part of me.
I think for me, my hair was one thing.
That's a good answer.
There was always this notion put on myself and other people who had grown their hair out, like, well, you know, when you get to a certain point, you're going to have to cut your locks because that's not professional looking, or places may not want to hire you with your locks. And I was just like, that's a non-negotiable thing for me. I cut them on my terms when I want to cut them, not for a job, right? That just was a non-negotiable thing for me. Like, my hair was, you know, my thing, and it still is my thing to a certain degree, but I just could not allow myself to be like, oh, let me cut my hair so I can make somebody else feel comfortable about my presentation or my look, and so I could be an acceptable looking black person to somebody. Because to me, it's like, if you don't want to hire black people, then that's just not a space for me. Whether I got a Caesar or dreads or whatever, if I got to give you a version of black that makes you feel comfortable with black people, then that's something for me. I'm like, nah. So that was definitely like a non-negotiable.
And that was one of the first things I noticed. I actually used to ask Bowman all the time. I'm like, do all EOF black men have dreads?
Yo, it's a dope movement to see in EOF because there are so many EOF professionals with dreads, and I love it, right? Because when I first got into the field, it wasn't a lot of us with dreads, and I think because there was just always this notion of you need to cut your hair. So I remember when I first got into EOF, it would be easy for people to know who I was because they was just like, oh, the one with dreads, because there wasn't a lot of us. And now if you be like, oh, you know the EOF guy with dreads, it's like, who are you talking about? Like, because there's
you got 1, 2, or 3, like what
right, there's Dr. Weaver, there's so many EOF professionals, and then even for somebody like myself who's a director, and Dr. Weaver who's a director of a program, right? That have this look that for many years people said was not the look that you can have as a professional black man, right? So yeah, my hair is definitely a non-negotiable at this point. The tattoo on my hand is a non-negotiable because it's there. I can't do anything about it. I don't recommend everybody go get a tattoo on their hand because depending on what field you go into, it may be a huge deal breaker for some people. But it was a thing that I did in college. It, you know, wasn't one of my shining moments until I was bored one night, and I was like, let me just go get a tattoo. And he was like, where you want it? I was like, put it on my hand. And I remember showing my mom, like, look, because it's her name. And she was like, how are you going to get a job? And I was like, that's not the reaction I was looking for. Thought she was going to be like excited, like, oh, look at my name. No, it wasn't that. But it's one of those things where I'm like, this is a part of who I am. I'm not ashamed of it. It's there. And that's just what it is, right? So I can't cover it. I'm not putting anything over it. And I remember when I finished my master's and I was applying for jobs, and I was like, oh, I gotta go start going on these interviews. And I'm like, should I buy like some body makeup and cover the tattoo on my hand? And then, you know, once I'm in there, they can see that I got one. And I just was like, nah, like it's a decision that I made. It's there. If a place is willing to look past what I bring to the table to only focus on my tattoo, then that's their loss. And I'm just grateful that, you know, working in higher ed, it's a lot less stuffy, so to say, in terms of what you should look like, right? And so for me, I'm blessed to be able to be in a career that allows me to bring more of myself, how I want to present myself to the table. And so, you know, yeah, my hair has been a non-negotiable. My sense of style is a non-negotiable. I love to get dressed up if need be, but I'm like a director that, you know, I don't wear suits to work every day. And again, that's why I love working in higher ed, because that's not the dress code that I have to adhere to. Mm-hmm. But even in that space, you have some black males in higher ed and EOF that's their thing. Like, that excellence means wearing a suit every day. And I'm like, that's not black excellence. It's a nice look. And even at Montclair, one of the organizations that I was advisor to that Bowman was the president of the Brotherhood of Harm and Die, right? We had this thing called Necktie Tuesdays, where it was to show, like, all right, black men can, if we choose to, put on a suit and tie and show up and look good and look nice and all that stuff. But I would always remind them, like, you're not a man because you can put on a suit. The man is the person in the suit, not the suit, right? Because you could be a well-dressed boy, and so sometimes I do feel like we put a lot of emphasis on appearance to the point where if somebody puts on a suit, we assume that they're a good black man. It's like, no, they just got on a nice suit, right? And it's good that you could put on a nice suit, but that shouldn't define who I am in terms of my character. And so, you know, even for me as a director, sometimes people will be like, oh, well, you don't put on suits. And even if I do put on suits, like, I love sneakers, right? So, like, you wearing a suit with a sneaker? Yes. And, you know, I'm glad to see that in the EOF world. You go to conferences and you see so many directors with their dope suits on with some sneakers, right? Everything doesn't have to be shoes. When I worked at Montclair, that's a huge campus, and I would wear these hard-bottom shoes walking from the train to my office, and I had a stress fracture in my foot, and that's when I was like, yeah, I'm going to just keep these sneakers on. I got a dope sneaker collection. I would love to show it off, and I shouldn't just have to only show it off on casual Fridays. I'm going to show it off every day. So now, you know, I'm in a space where I'm a director, and I get to kind of show up comfortable. You know, students are in my office. I'm out and about on campus, walking around, having a good time. I show up to the events, and I need to be comfortable. So, like, yeah, a suit and tie and hard bottoms is just not my thing every day. So, yeah, that's how I kind of show up as myself, and those things are non-negotiable for me at this point.
Is there any parts of that you try to, like, pass on to your kids?
Oh, yeah, all of that. You guys see my kids, you know my kids. Like, you know, my son has free-form locks that are just, you know, flowing beautifully out his head, and it's like, you know, he gets so many compliments on it, like, oh, your hair looks so great, and da-da-da-da-da. But every now and then he'll come home, and I guess if somebody made a comment about, like, oh, I think maybe I should get a haircut, and I'm like, for what? Right? Your hair looks great the way it is, right? And so, you know, teaching them that, you know, be you. You can't help what you look like, embrace every aspect of who you are, and accept that. And I teach them, you know, to be proud to be black kids, right? Because even, you know, with my children, with them being fair skinned and eye color, and people mean well, but they'll make comments like, are they black? And it's like, yeah, like,
what they mix
yeah, right, what they say. And so I literally sent my son to school one day with a shirt that said black mixed with black, right? And it's like, here you go. So if anybody got any questions, because people would ask that, what are they mixed with? And it's not to deny the fact that, you know, like my maternal grandmother, her father was white, her mother was black. So I'm not ever denying that. But it's like, you know, my wife and I, 2 black people. There's the kids. And yes, the genes in terms of the eye color, it pops up. There it is. But it, you know, people assume that to be black is you have to look a certain way, and so, you know, you would constantly hear that growing with them when they were younger. And my aunt had even asked me the other day, like, do people still look at y'all and ask like what does the mother look like, or who's the father, and things like that? And I'm like, well, if you look at my son, you can clearly see he looks exactly like me. Like, so it's like, yeah, his complexion might be lighter and he has these green eyes, but in terms of his facial features, they're mine. And so if anybody looks at him and then asks me, like, well, who you just seem silly at this point, right? But I think you know, the one thing I love about my family is that we are, you know, these different variations of skin color show people that black does not look one certain way. And so, you know, I definitely teach my kids to be proud of who they are, of what their look is like. You know, my daughter went to school today and she got her braids and her little, I guess the little, like how you got your 2 little hanging down. Yeah. And it's like, and she loves looking in the mirror, looking at her braids, but then what I really love is that she loves her hair when it's just out in her fro. And she like, I just want to wear my fro to school. And that makes me smile because in my house, it was the permed, straight, that is the presentable black woman looking. Even
Sunday night, you've been between your mama's legs. Like
right, I will watch my grandma press and curl my little cousin's hair at that stove, but that was the mindset that, you know, kinky hair was not the thing. And even sometimes with my mom, we'll go back and forth. She's like, when you gonna cut them kids' hair? What? And it's like, no, like, and my daughter loves her afro. Like, she, like, when you take her hair out of her braids, she's just like, oh, can I wear my afro? And so we'll give her like a week to just let her hair breathe, and she'll just show up to school with her fro, and we just, you know, keep it moisturized and nice, and it start big, and then it start getting tighter and tighter and tighter. But she loves it, and so, you know, I love that she at 4 years old embraces who she is naturally, right? Because kids at a very early age are taught to look a certain way, to wear their hair a certain way, to do all these things, and so I love the fact that, you know, they're so young, but they've embraced their look. And so she'll even say things like, I want to dress like you and Guy. And I'm like, oh, like the fact that, you know, she's 4 and she's identified with these ways that black people can present themselves. That's not just the old school traditional way that we liked black people to show up.
Okay. Our next question. What is your definition of making it out?
That's a really good question. And it's so funny that, you know, we're sitting here and I'm recanting like my college years and all that. So when I came into EOP, we had to read this story before our summer program started, because when we got there on the first day, they gave us like this quiz to determine which writing class we were going to be in, this writing sample. But we had to read this story called Plato's Allegory of the Cave. And I remember reading, it's like, what is this about? Like, why are we reading Plato? But it's, to this day, like one of the most profound things that I've ever had the opportunity to read in terms of something in literature, or like literary works or things like that, right? And so Plato's Allegory of the Cave deals with these individuals who are in this cave. And they have a little light that's lit in a cave that allows them to just look at the wall and see their shadows cast on the wall. So because this is their experience, the only life they know is these shadows, and they think that that is what life is. However, one of the prisoners in the cave gets free, and he steps outside the cave, and it talks about how the sun burns his eyes because it's the first time that he's had the chance to see the sun. And he ascends to the top of this mountain that the cave sits in. But Plato says that he's not allowed to stay there, right? So it's like he breaks free from the shadows, he goes and gets enlightened, right? But he's not allowed to just stay on the top of that mountain. He now has to go back into the cave and free the other people in here so they could go and get the enlightenment as well. And it talks about how it can be a dangerous thing, because when people only know shadows and you're trying to tell them there's a whole other world that exists outside of this, they're either going to laugh at you, it can get dangerous, they may try to hurt you. And we've seen other people who kind of represent this, Martin Luther King, right, who tried to bring people with him, and that was a dangerous thing because some people want us to stay ignorant. They want us to stay in the shadows. They want us to stay in the cave, right? I'm a believer, and so for me, Christ is like the ultimate example of somebody who tried to enlighten people and paid the price for it because people wanted people to stay in darkness, right? But for me, my definition of success is based on that notion that I'm not successful because I made it out, right? I'm successful if I'm helping other people to make it out. And I think sometimes we're taught in our communities to just get out. Right? It's bad. Get out, leave, don't come back. And some people literally will pride themselves on being able to say, I grew up in such and such, and I made it out. And I'm always like, okay, and who did you help make it out with you? Or did you throw a lifeline back? Did you go back into that cave and tap some people and say, y'all looking at shadows, that's not really you. Let me let you see what you can really see if you step outside of this and ascend and get enlightened, right? So to me, it's like my definition of success is doing what I'm doing, which is helping other people to have their eyes opened and to pull the veil off of their eyes and for them to be enlightened and for them to see that they can do it and expose them to greater things, but then to come back into those communities and help other people and then to build up the community itself, not to just leave it, but what are you doing to help to make it better? And I think we all have our lanes, and for me, my God-given lane is education and being able to use this program like EOF to go into Trenton and Trenton High and to come to Mercer County and find those students and to be able to give them opportunities to get these degrees, but to say, no, it doesn't stop there. You got to now go back and figure out some type of way to help. Everybody's not going to be an EOF counselor. Everybody's not going to work in EOF, but you still got the responsibility to try to help people back where you are. One of the things that I remember being so angry about in college, I went to this particular event. It was at the College of New Jersey. And it was this one guy from this fraternity because it was like one of their events, and he was like an older guy. And we were talking about like helping our communities, and he was like, yeah, because I'm from like Elizabeth, and I did well. And he was like, you know, my way of helping my community is for them just to know that somebody like them could make it out, because I don't go back there. Like, I don't got no reason to go back. And I just remember being so frustrated, like, that does not help our communities. One of the things that I would hate hearing in high school was a teacher say, oh, I had a student and he's so successful and he did this and you know such and such, that was my student and I'm so proud of them. I'm like, but they don't come speak to us. They don't come tell us about their journey. They don't come back. Like, so they made it. They did well for themselves and they left us. Like, they didn't come back and try to do anything to help make the situation better for us, knowing, and I don't care how successful you are, nobody has gotten to where they are without help and assistance in some way, whether they recognize it or not. If you went to college and you got financial aid, that's assistance. If you had a counselor who helped you, that's so nobody has been able to say, I made it all by myself with no help. That's a lie, right? And so, you know, we take the help of other people, become great things, at least on the outside, and we don't aspire to try to help other people achieve a fraction of what we achieved. Like, so for me, I would be frustrated when I would sit in class and hear teachers talk about, oh, I got this such and such student, they're a doctor and they're this, and I'm like, but what are they doing? And like, you know, to me, success is, you know, getting out of that cave, but going back into the cave to help other people get free too.
That's such a big thing for me, like, especially wanting to be like an EOF advisor. It's like,
oh, go ahead.
oh, when I will be an EOF advisor.
Yeah, right.
I just feel like
we claim that, right?
Not to like get him emotional, but like I had Mr. Bowman. That is like my representation of like giving back to the community. They need somebody like you, and so that kind of made me feel like I can be that. I want to be that for somebody. I want to introduce these Latino kids into the EOF program and them seeing like, oh, like she's an EOF advisor. She made it out. But I also want to get them out. Like, it's not just me who needs to get out. And like, I relate to that because I want to push them out. Like, that's my definition of making it out. If other people are good before me, then I'm good. That's just how I see it.
And that's the thing I do love about y'all group, that it's such a dope support system that you guys have here. You have by far one of the most amazing EOF staffs in the state, between, you know, the Bowmans and Farmer and staff and just the whole staff, right? Just this amazing, that truly love y'all, important to y'all, but then to see that y'all do it as well, right? That y'all are pouring back into the other students, into each other. And so I'm pretty sure that they're not going to let you become those types of individuals. Because sometimes we need people to hold us accountable and remind us, like, oh, wait a minute now. Yeah, I like what you're accomplishing, but don't forget, like, there's more to this, right? So I know that they'll hold you all accountable to make sure that you are paying it forward, right? And I think we all got to pay it forward. When somebody is, I am the counselor that I've been to my students, like I've been able to be who I needed to be to Bowman based on me having people pour into me that way. My EOP counselors did the same things for me that I'm doing for my students, and I see him doing it for you all, and then you all will do it for your students, right? And so that's how it's supposed to be, right? It should not be one person just doing it and then people just taking it and then everybody go and live their happy lives. And some students will do that, and I had to check some students in their adult age where they might complain about having to do something for it, and I'm like, but I had to do that for you. Yeah. And they're like, oh, yeah. Like, yeah, so I don't want to hear you complaining about having to help somebody when somebody had to help you. So, like, no, you don't get the opportunity to take and benefit and not give that back. And if you do, to me, then that's not real success.
Yeah.
If nobody's benefiting from your success, then how is it success?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
Speaking about that, like, I don't know, I feel like I also want to give like a shout out to Miss Anna because that's like my first like real person who showed me representation. That's the first time seeing somebody like me in a position of what I want to be. Right. So I definitely look up to her too.
Shout out to Anna. And that's what I said. Like y'all literally have a dope staff here. You know,
I love our group so much.
Y'all staff is truly amazing. Everybody, like I said, is doing the part to make sure that you all have everything that y'all need. And I know, because I know these people personally, and then even from what I'm able to see, like, they go to bat for y'all. They really fight for y'all. They really open up themselves to y'all, not just the office, but themselves, and the amount of time that they pour into y'all, and just see how connected you guys are to this program and its staff. That's just a really beautiful thing, and it's just something that y'all just got to remember that they did it for us. We owe it to do that for somebody in some way. And again, everybody's not going to be an EOF counselor. It would be great. That's my goal, to try to get as many of the students to come into the program, because I think we do all have to shift and move up into different spaces and places, and I don't think anybody understands EOF better than EOP or EOF students, and so you need people to be in those spaces. But yeah, y'all just can't never forget the amount of love and attention that you've received here, and that there's a you somewhere looking for that. I always try to remind myself and remind students that there's somebody just like you waiting for you. So just like you needed that mother figure, that father figure, that mentor, that guy, there's somebody else waiting for you. And so how dare you not at least try to be that for one person, at least, like, sheesh. Because everybody is looking for what they needed, right? So I'm able to be the counselor that I was and the director that I am based on what I needed somebody to be for me. So
I love you.
Listen. I got it's like my Ryder kids, and then it's my Mercer kids, and I'm very unapologetic about that. Like, you all are such a great bunch, and it's like, I'm like, wait, I see every time y'all posting something, and I literally be like, yeah, because I'm like, dang, they technically not my students. They belong to Mercer, right?
Soon.
We working on this one next. So, we're gonna open him up to the sociology life.
First and foremost, thank you. Not even just for being on the podcast, but just for being like such a. I don't even think you know like how instrumental you have been in our experience at Mercer, just from like the moment we saw you. So we met him in the summer program doing the masking workshop, and that event, it not only brought us closer, but I think it served as a foundation for like the way we operate, literally our friendships, the way we operate now. So honestly, I just want to thank you for being alive.
Thank y'all, and thank y'all for being who you all are and how you represent this program so well, because one of the dope things is, yes, you come in, you do the workshop, and sometimes you're like, all right, you never see or hear from the students and get to see what they're doing, but to literally watch you all have this bond that you have and this family that you've created, and like, I'll be on the stories and just see like, oh, they really hang together all the time. All day, every day. They know each other's schedules. They are always with each other. Like, they're supporting each other. Like, that is what EOP or EOF is all about. Like, that is what this program represents. And so I think you guys show other students who are coming in, like, this is what it's supposed to look like. Because they may feel lost. They may feel like, what? But then they see the bond that you have, the way that you support each other, the way that y'all will throw each other up on y'all stories and shout out everything that the person's doing, the fun that y'all have with each other. Like, people need to see that, students need to see that, because some people are going through this experience thinking that that can't happen for them. Like, they've been isolated, they've been ostracized, they've been doing things by themselves their whole lives, and they may think that's just what life looks like for me. I'm gonna just be out here on this island by myself, and then they get to see y'all like, oh nah, like, I could make friends, I could have a family. I tell my students all the time, there's a family that you're born into, and sometimes that family may not have been the best family. It could be that it's a very small family. It could be that people have been lost, like, you know, you've lost people in the family. So you then have this opportunity to create a family for yourself. And college is so dope in the sense that you get to meet people that you can say, this is going to be my brother, this is going to be my sister, this is going to be my, I get called uncle by some students, this is going to be my aunt and auntie, this is going to be my mom and dad if I need them to be that. So you get to create this family, and I think for students to see the family that you all have created here, it shows them that they can be a part of it too, and that they can create one for themselves. So that's really dope.
Yeah.
Can I call you Uncle Reggie?
Sure. Listen, and now I've really, you know, I had to embrace my elder at this point, because it's like, you know, y'all know, like, you know, Dom and Diamond are like, those are like my eldest kids, right? So those are the kids. And then now it's like, they call them mom and dad. I'm like, so that making, and then Liz and Bree be like, pop, and I'm like, oh yeah. I guess that would make me a papa. If y'all are their kids, then sheesh, I guess I really I don't reach pop status. So
we'll
you know, I embrace it though. You know, it is what it is.
I feel like I have told you this before, but like my like special moment with you was like when we were at the Capital 3 speaking for the collaboration. And like you said, there were like future advisors in this room. I don't know, when you said that, it's like something spoke like to me, and I remember running into his office and like telling him like, oh, like that's my calling, that's what I'm supposed to do. But like I didn't want to admit it to myself for like the longest, because I didn't think I would have like an impact on somebody. Right. And like I had been thinking about this since Isley. Like I remember telling Miss Anna about this, like I think I want to be an EOF advisor, but I kind of just brushed it off. And then after you said that, it's like, no, like that's what you're meant to do.
Listen, I think most of us found our calling in college, and it was just like a moment. It wasn't like nobody comes into college saying, I want to work in higher ed. It's not a major. I don't think we think about the people that work there like, wait, how did they end up here? You just know you got staff. You don't think about that. It's like an actual career for you. And it's always some type of transformative experience, whether you become a peer counselor or you have a advisor or somebody who kind of sees something in you and says something. And I think all of us have just had these like aha moments where it's like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Right? And so I'm always loving to hear students share those aha moments when they knew like, oh, hey, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Right?
Honestly, now that I think about it, I think, because it was when we were at the Capitol,
when
right?
we were speaking.
I remember that when you said that, and Bowen was sitting behind me, and he put his hand on my shoulder.
he just like patted us, cause like.
And I remember just laughing, and I was like, oh, haha. But then I was in the car, and I was thinking, and I was like, yeah, no. Yeah.
Because literally, like I said, the best EOF professionals are typically, right, because there are some really dope EOF professionals who did not come to the program. But, you know, the best ones typically are those who have to come through the program and can truly, in their own lives, testify to how dope the transformative that experience was. And it's so interesting that you all pinpoint that moment at I guess that was the day at the Capitol. and saying there's some future EOF counselors in here, and how, you know, you run back and told Miss Anna, and then Bowman tapped you on your shoulder. But I remember him getting up there speaking, and I was like, and I still have the picture of my phone, because I remember capturing this picture, and all I could see there is like, that's an EOF director right there. Right? So like, he's been had his EOF professional moment. That was at Montclair when he was a student, but it was like watching him and what he's doing with y'all, and then seeing him, like, literally, I remember the day at the Capitol, he got up and he was just commanding the room, and he was sharing testimony, and he was talking and walking back and forth, and I was like, oh, look at that EOF director standing there. So like, that day is a special day for me too, because it was the day where I looked at him and was like, oh, that's definitely an EOF director right there.
Do you remember the day we found out that he wanted to be a director? It was when it was Trail or Not Trail. It was the opening for Capital 3. And we were going around the room. We were like, say one thing you want. And the counselors didn't want to do it. We were like, no, Bowman, say what you want. And he was like, you know what? I want an EOF director. And he was like,
that makes sense. Like, I don't know. It just makes sense. And like, I don't know. We joke about it with him, but like, we 100% feel like he's gonna get there one day. And like, we joke that we're gonna work for him. We're gonna work for him.
He'll be there soon, God willing.
Yeah.
And I think even for those of us who love EOF, we all got to figure out our ways to do it. And sometimes, in order to really help the program, you got to elevate from one position to the next. And I remember that moment as a counselor sitting in a meeting, like, nah, it's time for me to be a director.
Yeah.
Because I know that in that position, there are opportunities to do things for my students that I can't do as a counselor. Decisions that can be made that I don't have to fight against as a counselor, because as a director, I'm making that decision. But even in my role as a director, and I've sat, and there was an aha moment for me sitting in a meeting where I was like, yeah, I can't stay a EOF director. I got to now get there, because even as a director, sometimes people are making decisions that impact my program that I have to fight against and advocate for. And it's like, thank God I'm a director that will fight. But sometimes I'm like, nah. If you were in that position, it wouldn't be no fight to be had, because you know better, and you know what decisions will ultimately be best for EOF. And so we always have to remember that even as much as we love this program, we are going to be called to higher levels sometimes. And then you don't have to rush it, because I think, you know, sometimes people can jump the gun and be like, all right, I'm going to do a year as a counselor, then I'm going to just be it's like, whoa, shit. So I definitely put a lot of time in the counselor role. But yeah, you got to recognize that, you know, your calling is one thing, your assignment is different. So the calling can stay the same, the assignment changes, right? So just like if you're in a class, like, that's a public speaking class, that the class doesn't change, but you got different assignments. And so one is due then this one is due. And so even in life, like, our purpose and our calling is one thing, but our assignments to carry out that purpose and calling change. And so, you know, we started EOP student and peer counselor, and I literally did the student, peer counselor, office worker, grad assistant, counselor.
I'm on my way there. I'm on my way there, guys. I'm on the step.
Right, see? So it was literally, but the assignment changed to get me to where I am now. And I know that this assignment will change at some point. Right now it's not, I'm loving it. So, but I do know that it changes at some point that really allows me to help the program in ways that I can't even as a director.
Yeah. Alrighty.
All right. So